So today we're going to be talking more about schema, right? Our schema. And we've talked about text to text, we've talked about text to world, we've talked about text to self, and all of those help us with our schema. Our schema is all of the information stored in our brains that we've read, that we've done ourselves, that we've experienced, or we've seen happen in the world, okay? And then our schema helps us make meaning of what goes on in books that we read. We put it all together. It helps us make predictions about what might happen in a story. And many times that schema, that kind of movie in your head, changes as you read the book. Okay, so I'm going to read today Rosemary Wells, a book by Rosemary Wells, Hazel's Amazing Mother. And let's think about some of the things that are happening in the schema. So you're going to be listening today to my schema out loud. Hazel's Amazing Mother. Oh, I already have a schema thing because I see that I'm going to predict that they're in a book or in a garden or at home, outside might be the setting because I can see a garden with a fence there. I also can predict that it's a fictional story. It could be a realistic fiction, but I don't know that yet because the characters are not real. Hazel's mother gave Hazel a nickel and a kiss and said, "Buy something nice for our picnic." "I will," said Hazel, and she wheeled Eleanor's carriage down the street. Schema, text to self. I know that when I was little, I used to walk my dolls all the time, so I'm predicting that Hazel is a doll, not a real baby. Hazel stopped to help the mailman. "I see Eleanor has new shoes," said the mailman. "My mother made them," said Hazel. Eleanor's shoes were sky blue silk. "Good morning," said the policeman. "I see Eleanor has a new dress." "My mother made it," said Hazel. Eleanor's dress was calico with French lace trim. I have a text-to-self connection, which is my schema, helping me with this book, understanding my mother used to make my doll's doll clothes, and she still makes my daughter's doll clothes. And they ask her all the time. "Such a pretty doll," said the baker. "My mother made her," said Hazel. The baker gave Hazel a buttercream rose. Hazel bought 2 cookies from the baker, one for herself and one for Eleanor, but since Eleanor couldn't open her mouth, Hazel ate them both. And I know that, again, some of my schema is that when we used to have tea parties, we would give things to our teddy bears and our animals that were around for our tea parties when we would play, and then we would eat them too, and they were yummy. With her last 3 pennies, she bought some grapes from the fruit lady and a piece of toast with jam from the jelly man. "Can you find your way home, little girl?" asked the fruit lady. "Oh, yes," answered Hazel. But the next corner, Hazel made a wrong turn. Oh, my schema just gave me a big ugh in my stomach because I know what it feels like to be lost, and I'm taking a text-to-self schema, and I'm worried about her, and I'm predicting that she's going to be really, really nervous because she's going to get lost. Remember, schema helps us predict what might be happening in a story. It also it could be wrong. It could be changing as I read it. After she took another wrong turn and another until she found herself on a lonely hilltop in part of town where she had never been before. Remember, you're just listening to my schema today. "Don't worry, Eleanor," said Hazel. "We'll find our way back." Just then a boy's voice rang out. "Hey, Doris! Someone's stealing our ball!" In a flash, Hazel was surrounded. "What should we do, Doris?" asked the other boy. "If she's going to play with our ball," said Doris, "we'll play with her doll." Oh my. My schema just said, oh my gosh, are they bullying her? And my heart rate started beating fast, and I'm worried that Hazel's going to start crying and she's not going to know what to do. Those are all things I'm predicting based on my schema, my things that I've experienced or seen happen with boys. Eleanor was tossed from hand to hand. Off came her silk blue shoes. "Stop!" Hazel shouted. Higher and farther they threw her. Off came her calico dress. Out came her stuffing. "No," pleaded Hazel, but she was powerless to stop them. My prediction so far is right. Hazel's getting very upset, and the doll is getting ruined, and I don't know how that's all going to stop. I'm using my schema. When they had finished with her, Eleanor was a little more than a rag. "Eleanor, my Eleanor," said Hazel. "Let's ride the carriage down the hill," said Doris. Hazel rocked poor, ruined Eleanor in her arms. She heard the carriage splash into the pond at the bottom of the hill. "Oh, Mother," she cried. "Mother, I need you." And I have to wonder, my schema is also wondering if the mother realizes she's lost. At that moment, on the other side of town, Hazel's mother was picking the tomatoes from her picnic. Something told her Hazel needed her. Ah, my schema's right, isn't it? I'm predicting. A drop of rain fell, then it began to pour, and a great wind sprang up. It blew the picnic blanket over the garden wall. Hazel's mother caught hold of it, but the wind was so strong. I predict that Hazel is scared, and it's cold, and it's raining, and she's, or Eleanor rather, Doris rather, she's cold, and it's raining, and she's scared. That swept the blanket, Hazel's mother, the picnic basket, and the dozen tomatoes over the treetops as if there were no heavier than a blowing leaves. My prediction, based on my schema on other books that I've read, is that all of a sudden her mother's going to end up right beside Doris. The blanket, filled with air, ballooned out and sailed over the town. My schema is also telling me this is not a realistic fiction book, right? Because could this really happen in real life?
No.
You could really get lost, but the whole blanket thing is probably not true. At last, it lodged in a very large tree where Hazel was sheltered from the rain. Was my schema right? Mm-hmm. My prediction right? Mm-hmm. Doris and the boys were about to run home when Hazel's mother voice boomed out from overhead. Wait just a minute. I predict that her mother, based on my schema, is going to save her and talk to the boys about their bullying. A tomato hit Doris smack between the eyes. Don't make a move without fixing Eleanor, Hazel's mother roared. Who are you? Doris squealed. It's my mother, said Hazel. Find Eleanor's dress and shoes, rumbled Hazel's mother. Restuff her and sew her up as good as new. Hazel's mother tossed her pocket sewing kit down to Doris. It followed by 3 more tomatoes. The boys quivered like jello. It was all Doris's fault, they yelled. Hazel's mother, laughed thunderously. Thunderously means laughed really loud. Like, ha, 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 ha. Hazel's mother laughed thunderously. Fish that carriage out of the pond and clean it up, she told him. Is my prediction right? She's helping her daughter? Mm-hmm. The boys scrubbed feverishly. Doris sewed like a machine. Above them, the sun came out and the clouds slipped away. Eleanor's carriage worked without a squeak. Eleanor was perfect except for her eyes, which Doris could not find in the grass. The moment Doris and the boys left, Hazel's mother dropped to the ground. I think her mother's going to be upset. Hazel's mother found the eyes and sewed them back on while Hazel ate a sandwich. Was my prediction right that her mother was upset?
Yeah.
No, not on this page. So sometimes my prediction, my schema could be wrong, but so it's going to change as I'm reading the book. Oh, Mother, said Hazel, how did you do it? It must have been the power of love, said Hazel's mother. Then they packed up and went home. Hazel took 2 ladyfingers, one for herself and one for Eleanor. But since Eleanor couldn't open her mouth, Hazel ate them both herself. Yeah, we could predict that, right? Because we've heard it already in the book. So our schema helps us. It makes a movie in our head about what we think might happen at prediction, and then sometimes our schema is not right and it changes as the book goes on.